Hello and welcome to the Wednesday night special. Tonight we're going to do something a little different. We're going to talk about 11 of them I think we have time for, of the nominees that Donald Trump has said he wants to put into government. I have no idea. We haven't talked about this before. I have no idea where everybody stands on these nominees. I have a feeling we have varying opinions on some of these people. I've come up with a few categories. There's the, oh yeah. That's people like, in my opinion, Kash Patel, where I'm like, oh yeah. He's just going to blow things up, and it will be a good thing. He'll expose things. Then there's people like Pete Hegseth, who I'm going to give the president the benefit of the doubt. Not real happy, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. And then there's the over my dead body. We might find one of those as well. But let me welcome the panelists. We have Stu Burguiere, we have Jason Buttrill, Steve Deace, and former FBI agent Steve Friend with us. Hello, Steve. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
I want to start with you because you're former FBI. Kash Patel, let me play something that Andrew McCabe said, and then follow that, please, with MSNBC and what they said about Kash Patel. Watch.
It's a terrible development for the men and women of the FBI and also for the nation that depends on a highly functioning, professional, independent Federal Bureau of Investigation. The fact that Kash Patel is profoundly unqualified for this job is not even like a matter for debate.
To me, Kash Patel, and I don't say this lightly, is the most dangerous nominee that we've seen yet to our democracy. I mean, you might think that having Pete Hegseth running the military is a greater level of danger because of his lack of experience, or Tulsi Gabbard at intelligence. But just as far as the threats to democracy that we were warning up about before the election, and Kash Patel was a key player inside the Trump White House, pushing for and orchestrating the coup attempt in 2020. He was trying to completely take control of the Justice Department at the time. He was Trump's top lieutenant who was willing to do anything and advance any lie in service of his attempt to overturn that last election, to such a degree that there were many people that were Trump appointees in 2020 who were staying around and saying no, like standing in the breach and saying no, not Kash Patel.
There were Trump appointees that disagreed with Trump. Wow, who would have seen that coming? Steve, as an FBI agent, what do you think of Kash Patel?
Well, I met with you 2 years ago, Glenn. You had me out there to the studio for another episode about FBI weaponization. And afterwards, it was pretty grim. You said, can you give me a silver lining? And I couldn't at the time. But now, 2 years later, I have to say that Kash Patel is the man for this time. Exactly.
Great.
Now, Andy McCabe, who served as the acting director of the FBI, he did that after James Comey, from his spot there, ran an off-the-books honeypot operation and told undercover agents to get into sexual escapades with George Papadopoulos on the Donald Trump campaign, and then sent agents to go and entrap Mike Flynn. And Andy McCabe, who oversaw Crossfire Hurricane with Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. And now we have Christopher Wray, who oversaw the censorship of the Hunter Biden laptop and the arrests of 90-year-old concentration camp survivors for praying outside of abortion clinics. Look, Kash Patel is eminently qualified. His bona fides are known to probably most of your audience, but the one thing that I do want to point out is that he was a defense attorney to begin with. He was a local and federal public defender. So he knows and has an appreciation for the power that the federal government brings to bear, which I think is really important. And for those on the left, how are you going to stand in the way of somebody who comes from a perspective of defense and a man of color? So let's just give him a chance.
I love how this all comes back on them. Let me play cut one, please, of Kash Patel. He was in my office, and I was asking him about Epstein. Watch this. Who has Jeffrey Epstein's
Black Book?
Black Book?
FBI.
But who? That is, I mean, there's...
that's under direct control of the director of the FBI. Just like the manifesto from the Nashville school shooting of the Catholic school. We still haven't seen that, right? It's not the Nashville police or PD saying we don't want this out. The FBI airmailed into that operation and said, this is not getting out. Because they do that because this is another government gangster operation. All these local law enforcement communities get funding from the DOJ and FBI for local programs. And if you don't cooperate, you're not getting your $1 million for this, and you're not getting and that's a lot of money to these local districts.
So he's in my office, and I said, so this is too much power for anybody to have. This can't just disappear. And he said, no, it should be released. All those names should be released. We should expose it so it loses its power to hold over somebody. I think this guy is poised to be possibly the most transparent FBI director ever, because that's the only way to destroy the deep state is just say, here are the pictures, here are the files, here's what they've done in the past. Steve Deace, what do you think?
So, Glenn, on my show, what I've done is I've put all of Trump's appointments into two categories, flat out A or incomplete. And the reason why is because we're watching Trump kind of transform the Republican Party from an ideologically based party to a coalition-based party. And so what that means is when people realize there's certain things they have to adopt to in order to get a more prominent place in the coalition, you'll see things like my complete waste of space U.S. Senator for the last 10 years, Joni Ernst, suddenly come up and compile a list of trillions of dollars of cuts, okay? And in the case of Kash Patel, instant A. Absolute instant A to me. Someone that right away on the surface is a disruptor and has but then also has the qualifications to do the job. That's one thing I think we have forgotten sometimes on the right is that politics is not just a message, it's a vocation. Can you actually do the job? Can you actually govern? And I think I think it's not a coincidence that Iran just suddenly decided to hack his data just as he's about to become the director of the FBI. I think that's a total scam.
It's so funny that you say it that way, Steve, because I think it was Iran as well.
Yeah, I think it's people that are looking to Iran very far away from the things they've done the last few years. I mean, there ought to be a GIF. I mean, who lit more on fire? When Heath Ledger's Joker lit all the mobs of Gotham's money on fire in The Dark Knight, or all the documents that are lit on fire right now at FBI, NIH, HHS, etc. You make the call.
Yeah. Let me go to Jason because I want to change to go to Hegseth. Hegseth is in my, I'll give the president the benefit of the doubt. He wouldn't have been my pick, but I don't like this smear tactic that's going on, especially the releasing of the mom's information. And then mom has just come out and said, that was 6 years or 7 years ago. My son has changed. I wish I wouldn't have said those things. That's not who my son is today, blah, blah, blah. But the reason why I like Kash Patel is because he comes with that little Acme plunger, where he's going to clean house. Is Hegseth qualified for what we're facing in the world? And is he a hatchet man?
When I think about Pete, I think it's two different conversations on whether he's qualified to do a job that would require, let's say, multiple different wars break out in multiple different theaters within the world. So you're looking at sending 50,000 troops over to this theater, 50,000 troops to this theater, and another who knows whatever over there, and coordinate everything in real time because you have the experience, you're qualified to do that. Do I think Pete Hegseth is qualified right now to do that? No, I do not think he's qualified to do that. Do I think that's what he is for right now? I do not think that's what he is for. And this is why I'm giving the president also the benefit of the doubt on Pete. Because I think that what he could be for is to come in and immediately be that plunger that we know needs to get done at the Department of Defense. First thing that Biden had Lloyd Austin, his Secretary of Defense, do when he showed up was be a plunger, only in a negative way.
In a way that I've never seen before. He gave the order to stand down the military all over the planet while they weeded anybody who even thought Trump was a decent guy.
Right, and and what was it for? It was to get those Christian nationalists.
Yes.
It was to all that stupid crap, to start implementing the DEI.
And he does know this.
Yeah.
He wrote the book on it.
It's exactly what he knows. And that's what makes me think that's if I'm Donald Trump, I'm the commander-in-chief of the military, I'm looking at what is the most immediate threat to the country right now. Well, we're not, our Department of Defense is not defense-minded. It's minded on going woke, doing all this stupid crap that has nothing to do with the defense of the country. How do I tackle that first? I get a guy in like Pete that will tackle that first. I do not know how long he expects him to be there. If he does make it through, I have no idea. But I think it could be vital for someone like him to come in and start that process.
Okay, back in just a minute, I want to switch to Tulsi Gabbard because she's now head of DNI. That's the whole new thing with her.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about our borders. We'll be back in just a minute. Stand by. You know, the left would like you to believe that every woman who has an abortion magically gets happier. You know, shout your abortion. It's great. I'm going to have more. The truth is, abortion doesn't just kill a baby. Often it ruins the mother's life as well. The stats that are coming out now about the emotional health of women after an abortion, a year after, it's staggering. It is, God help us if it happens to our young daughters. It will live with them forever. We can't just care about the babies. We have to care about the mom, too. And this is why I like the Ministry of Preborn. They fight for the mothers who are deciding between life and death for their unborn children by introducing them to the truth with a free ultrasound. Once the mom sees that ultrasound, it doubles the chances mom's going to choose life. But then the next bump is, I don't have any support. I don't have the money. I don't have anybody in my family that will help. That's why Preborn also offers additional assistance for up to 2 years. You're saving 2 lives, the mom and the baby. As we come to a year's close, would you consider giving a donation? If you've been extra blessed, a big donation perhaps, but $28 can save a baby's life with a free ultrasound. $15,000 buys a machine so they can open up another clinic to be able to save babies. Dial pound 250, say the keyword baby, pound 250 keyword baby, or go to preborn.com/Glenn. That's preborn.com/Glenn, sponsored by Preborn. All right, my 3 categories again for the nominees. Oh yeah. Second category is, I'm going to give the president the benefit of the doubt. He deserves it. And the third one is over my dead body. But since the sheriff in Florida said, I'm going to remove myself from the nomination of the DEA, I don't really have anybody on the over my dead body list, I don't think. We're welcoming in Liz Wheeler, who's going to chime in just a second. But Stu, I want to go to you about Tulsi Gabbard. I like Tulsi. I think you like Tulsi.
Yeah.
And the thing I just heard from somebody who is high up in Intel, and they said, I love Tulsi, but she has no idea where the bodies are buried. I talked to the president last night, and I said, I talked to somebody who said, this is the Intel, it spooks, and does she know where the bodies? And he said, she may not, but there are people around her who will. How do you feel about this appointment for this really important role?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those situations where it's a trust but verify situation for me. I mean, I'd put her in that second category of trusting the president's judgment, and we'll see. You know, I think he needs to watch closely,
and not because of her politics.
Kind of because of her politics,
really?
For me. I mean, you know, look, she's had a transition, and it's been a pretty significant one, from running Bernie Sanders' campaign in Hawaii to running against Donald Trump, the president, in 2020, to going into independent and then becoming a Republican, all within the last decade. That is an understandable arc, right? I can see that.
In 15 years, 20 years, I've gone changed, from... Right? I am all in on Iraq to what the hell are we thinking? So you do change.
It is absolutely possible, and it is an understandable timeline for an arc. That being said, I think it's important to make sure that this isn't one of the things she really has changed on, right? Like I would say, like she's had multiple changes. Like I think she came to see wokeness as crazy.
Yeah.
But her opinions on these particular issues have been pretty consistent.
Yeah.
I think they generally align, and I think if you look at his appointments in the realm of foreign affairs, you see a sort of team of rivals approach, right? Like they're not all Tulsi Gabbards. We can talk about some of the other people, though. Some of them are more aggressive and hawkish than her. I think it's an okay balance. It's just got to keep an eye on it.
I don't think to me, this appointment doesn't have anything to do really with foreign affairs as much as it does stopping the spying and the use of the spy agencies against the American people. Let me bring in Liz Wheeler. Liz, do you want to chime in on this? Because I want to move to the border, but I want to give you a chance to chime in on Tulsi if you have something.
Yeah, I echo much of what Stu says. I would put her in the middle category of I trust President Trump. I think her intentions are good. I think she was labeled a terrorist, for goodness sake. She's not going to give the intel community the benefit of the doubt. Does she know where the bodies are? I don't know. So maybe her staff is something that we should look at very closely. But I think the American people are playing a really unique role in this transition and in President Trump's second administration. And he's listening to us when we point out information like that Florida sheriff who was Trump's DEA pick. He didn't know the information until we brought it to light. Once we brought it to light, he saw it. He said, "Nah, you're out of here." So I think that this is an okay pick for Tulsi. It's not one of my top picks because of the things Stu mentioned. Her recent transformation. I'm not skeptical of it, but I think she needs a minute for that transformation to settle, but she should be good.
We were talking about Pete Hegseth a minute ago, and at the time of the taping, he's still the nominee, but that could change by the time this airs because it's changing minute by minute. How would you feel about, and do you think this would be real, Ron DeSantis in that role, Liz?
My sources tell me that is not a real thing, that is a psyop, a campaign to try to ruin our enthusiasm, put a damper on the fight for Pete Hegseth. Listen, I'm a devout Catholic. I don't agree personally with Pete Hegseth's promiscuous Playboy past. I don't really think that's relevant, though, to his confirmation. I think his nomination is of critical importance. Matt Gaetz, I felt the same way about, but he was withdrawn so quickly that we kind of got over that hump and we're like, okay, now we have to fight for Pete Hegseth. But this is one of the primary core reasons we elected Trump, was to send disruptors in to the deep state to drain the swamp. Pete Hegseth, these people hurling allegations about him drinking alcohol on set, unsubstantiated, disputed, promiscuous allegations. That's standard. I mean, God forbid we use that standard for the senators who are going to vote for his confirmation, right? Like, let's apply that to the mainstream media outlets that are publishing it. We want him to be disruptive. They're afraid of his disruption, which is why they're engaging in character assassination and not contending with the substance of the policies he wants to implement there.
So, let me switch to the border. I think we all have to start looking at what the Mexican army is doing, and are they amassing troops along our border to stop drugs and to stop people coming in? I have a feeling that Mexico is realizing there's a new sheriff in town, and it's not Homan alone. It's Donald Trump. And Homan, Steve, let me have you chime in. What's your thoughts on Homan as the borders are?
I think it is vitally important that if the president, and it appears that he is, Glenn, is serious about moving forward with mass deportations, someone who can stand there against the emotional onslaught that will come our way once those begin, and to turn those around, and to be seen as a strong leader that can rally the country, to hold firm, to hold the line against all of the stories and the propaganda that will come in response. I think that is vitally important. I think this might even be the most important messaging position in the entire administration, other than the president himself, because if we're going to see something we haven't seen in America in many of our lifetimes, and what the media is going to do in reaction to this is going to test the resolve of a lot of fig leaf seeking Republicans in Washington, D.C. And so I think a guy that can do for this issue what Norman Schwarzkopf, for example, did during the first Iraq War in holding court and giving confidence to the American people, I think that's going to be vital in this position, maybe more than any other appointment. And I think Tom Homan has demonstrated he has the ability to capture the imagination where that is concerned.
So I have to agree with you, and I think that's what these guys all have in common. You know, people are like, they're just TV people. A lot of them are just TV. Yeah, because he can't be the only point person that has to go out and explain. He needs hatchet men that know what their job is and can also stand up in front of the press and say, shut the pie hole. Here's what's happening and here's why it's happening. Jason.
I like the idea of, at least, if anything, going outside the usual barrel of monkeys. I mean, I feel like every time there's a new administration, we get the same personalities with the same viewpoints. They all come from the same backgrounds, and you know nothing is going to change. You know, there's certain things like in the Department of Defense or the Pentagon where, you know, I could advocate for let's not go to war here or let's fix this. But dang it, if it wasn't so profitable, if we weren't making so much money, which they'll never say out in public, but that's what we've come to expect for the last bit of time. I like the fact that we're looking at different people. I like the fact that, you know, Pete Hegseth is not my typical, oh, that guy is very qualified to do certain things. But I like the fact that he's coming from a different way. He's got to come from a different angle.
I was speaking at an event last night with the president, and I said, We've just fulfilled what our founders intended us to do in the Declaration of Independence. Governments that are instituted amongst men to protect those rights. And paraphrasing, when the government becomes hostile to those rights, it is their duty and their responsibility to overthrow that government and replace it with guardians better suited to protect those rights. That's what happened. This was a peaceful revolution that we said, we don't trust any of these people. We elected a guy who now is coming in and saying, I think these people are better suited to protect your rights, and they're getting rid of everybody else.
Yeah, and I think with Homan on the border in particular, like about, I don't know, maybe 25% of this problem can be solved by tone. Right, like it's not just a messaging situation to the American people, it's a messaging situation to Central and South America, right? If that tone is clear, you don't come. It's not going to solve the problem completely, but if it's a clear tone, it slows that flow and it makes a big difference.
Anybody concerned about Kristi Noem? I like Kristi Noem, but Department of Homeland Security, we are on the edge with the number of people that we have in our country right now of bad Homeland Security. Is she qualified?
I would say probably not. I don't see anything that would make her qualified for it. I think that she is stepping into probably it's going to have the most transition, the most turnover, I think, of any other position. She's almost set up to fail on this, which kind of sucks. I could see them going through 4 or 5 of these bad boys in this position before it's done. But because there's just so much, like, I agree with Steve, talking about the border czar. Like, it is so important, maybe the most important thing as messaging is concerned, for him to get right, because we are pissed at this. I think, but for both Homan and for Kristi Noem, you've got a huge job, the two of you. And I could see them, like I said, going through multiple different at those positions.
Okay, so we haven't talked about Pam Bondi yet from Florida for AG, but also speaking about things that people are pissed about is education. We want to go there next. You know, I noticed something the other day. I was watching an old clip of me and I thought, you're getting older. It happens, and you feel older at times. You feel the aches and pains that come along with, getting older. Horrible, horrible pain in my hands. You've been with me, both of you guys have been with me for years. There were times we had codes for the camera, take the camera off of Glenn because my hands would start to do this and the pain was so bad. I didn't know if I could even do my job. I don't know how this broke the back of that, but you used to fly with me all the time. It was horrible.
From debilitating to, oh my gosh, That's how big the difference was.
It is. And what broke the back is Relief Factor. It's a daily supplement, 100% drug-free. Worked for me. 70% of the people who take it, it works for them. Try it. Try it. You'll get a trial pack, 3 weeks. You take it as directed every day. If it works for you in 3 weeks, you're starting to see things. The clock is turning back, on the pain. Keep taking it. If not, it's probably not going to work for you. It worked for me. ReliefFactor.com, 800-4RELIEF, 800, the number 4, RELIEF. So earlier today on my radio program, I talked to the committee chair, Brad Wenstrup. He is the House COVID committee chair. And what they released, I think yesterday and today, was the public parts of the crimes against, in my opinion, crimes against humanity when it comes to COVID. He told me off the air, because we ran out of time, he said, Glenn, the rest of it, when it's released, when it's declassified, he said it'll peel the skin off of people's face. It is horrid what happened. There are connected to this, two people that I think are home runs connected to this. First of all, Bhattacharya is that is the best. He's NIH. And then in this category, RFK Jr. He is not going to stop until all of this stuff is exposed and that is cleaned up. And the same with Bhattacharya. The guy who wrote the book on it is Steve Deace. Steve, how do you feel about these guys?
I feel, frankly, I feel a sense of gratitude for these appointments from President Trump. I think that they're historic. I think we will get now the reckoning, Glenn, that I had kind of given up hope that we were going to get. I think it's also a victory for, Elon Musk saying we are the media. Nobody knew what a Jay Bhattacharya was 4 years ago. And it was shows like mine and platforms like we have at The Blaze that discovered him, platformed him, gave him work, got him, gave him an audience, got him, on the stage. And he's just been a superstar ever since. And I think the dichotomy of Francis Collins, who rode some notion that he was some kind of evangelical Christian to the offices of NIH, where he just absolutely screwed the country and I think created or committed crimes against humanity, to now be replaced by a sincere man of faith in Jay Bhattacharya, who's also a great scientist in and of himself. That's just divine cosmic justice there. And I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has a chance to be among the most consequential cabinet appointments any president's made. We're talking like Seward level of a cabinet appointment here. The kind of cabinet appointment that decades after he is gone is still going to be like a Kissinger, like a name that people still remember at a kitchen table. And I think, if you were in the camp with us that fought against COVID, were disappointed at Trump's actions his last year in office and the times that he showed a lack of repentance for it during the campaign, and maybe you were hesitant and you ended up voting for him anyway, your vote paid off with those two moves in spades times 1,000 in and of themselves. Yeah,
I have to tell you, and Liz, I love your opinion on this. I talked to President Trump about RFK. We were talking about all of the different people that he's appointed. He said, what do you think of RFK? And I said, there's a lot of stuff I don't really agree with him on, climate change. I said, but I think he's a home run. And he said, this guy is laser focused. He said, COVID and also, the problems we're having with autism. He said, there's something to that. He has a theory. I don't know if it's right, but I think we need to go down that fully and see if the evidence shows something that everybody else is denying. What do you think of RFK, Liz?
First, I want to commend President Trump for the courage that it took to appoint RFK.
Yeah.
There's probably going to be not a single fight, including Matt Gaetz or Pete Hegseth, that is going to be as fierce of a battle as the confirmation of RFK. And I just want to tell President Trump, first, thank you for appointing RFK. And second, you would not even believe the amount of support that you have across the country for getting this man confirmed and in charge of HHS. Do not underestimate our support.
Where do you think the conflict is going to come from? Where's the argument? Both sides?
There's going to be elements from both sides. but you'll be able to tell exactly who it's going to come from if you look at who Big Pharma is funding. Big Pharma has almost unlimited pockets of money that they're going to put behind every kind of attack possible on RFK, whether it's calling him anti-science, whether it's trying to castigate his character. He is a colorful individual, I think he's called himself. He has a storied past. There's going to be stories about him. There's going to be reports. Some of them are probably even going to be true, but it's all in an effort to discredit him in his questions of, are we telling the truth about the side effects and the risks versus the benefits of the childhood vaccine schedule, which isn't just an opinion coming from the Public Health Administration. This is essentially forced on parents. Parents are coerced into giving their children 72 shots in the first couple of years of their lives. Meanwhile, we have this chronic health epidemic among children. I mean, in California, 1 out of every 22 little boys are being diagnosed with autism. This is insane. Absolutely insane that we've ignored this as a society, and parents across the country who've been gaslit about this for decades now feel this hope that we've barely dared let ourselves think. Like I said, I not only thank President Trump, I say don't underestimate how willing we are to fight to get this guy confirmed.
As we had a conversation last night, I said, he said, how do you think people feel about, so-and-so and so-and-so? And I said, I think every disruptor that you put in, everybody who's like, I don't really care. I got nothing to lose. I'm not playing the game. I don't like anybody in this, in this department that I'm now overseeing. I have no loyalty to anything except the truth. I said, you are hitting home runs every time you put somebody like that in. And I think that eventually will unite people because I think Big Pharma can spend all the money they want. The last presidential candidate whose name will soon be forgotten in history spent $1.5 billion and at least $10 billion in earned media against Donald Trump, and it didn't work. Let me go to Linda McMahon and education. The last Department of Education secretary we had, Betsy DeVos, she said, shut it down. Linda McMahon is a great manager. She's not known necessarily as a disruptor, but she is known as somebody who can manage and do what the president asks her to do. Do we believe the Department of Education is going away?
No.
I don't think
it would be amazing.
I would love it.
But I don't think so. I personally would love someone like Kermit the Frog to be in that position so that they could just like sit there at a desk, never do a thing except make funny noises with, have a funny voice and just leave it all to the states and let them do their job. I think that McMahon is capable of doing this job. I think a multitude of people would be capable of doing this job. I do not think
I don't want this job. I want this job to go away.
But when I say this job, I mean as in delegating power back down to where it's supposed to go. Okay. So you can keep it there. The DOE is not going anywhere. But as long as we get what we want out of this, which is the delegation back down.
If we don't shut these things down, Steve, help me out on this. If we don't shut this down, it could just regrow, the next time the Republicans don't have power. We have to shut these things down and do them the right way and not through executive orders.
So, Glenn, this is the one cabinet job vetting process I have some inside word on because one of my best buddies, Oklahoma superintendent of schools, Ryan Walters, was one of the finalists for this job. Yeah. And now that it's been determined, I can tell you some things that I know about how this went. I mean, he began interviewing with Trump for this job months ago. He went through a series of interviews. He was on the phone with Trump, game theorying out how to eliminate the Department of Education. What do they do if the courts step in and say you can't? Then they can use the budget reconciliation process. So there's still a figurehead, a mantle, a letterhead called the Department of Education, but all its funding is block granted to the states. And then if the Democrats want to come back into office years later and try to reinstate it, and then they can argue to the states while they're taking all that money back. And it kind of does to them what Obamacare did to us. Once you establish something for someone, it's kind of hard to then take it away later. So I can just tell you from the conversations that Ryan had with President Trump, he is very serious about trying this on some level. He kind of compared it, from what I was told, to he was the first Republican to move the embassy to Jerusalem after it had been promised to us for 30 years. Well, now it's been promised to us for 40 years that he wants to try it at the very least. I actually think he is serious based on the conversations that he had with Ryan Walters about it.
Yeah, no, I believe he is serious. I mean, I've looked him in the eye several times in the last 30 days. That man is serious about all of this.
Yeah, I don't say no knock on Linda McMahon, but I think to Steve's point, like if Walters was the pick, I think I would be more confident that something like this was going to happen.
Yeah.
I would also just be, if we don't get that, I would love the Department of Education to go away, but someone who's a strong advocate for school choice, which Linda McMahon is, I think would at least be a really positive change.
Yep. Okay, let me come back because there's two that I don't really have. Well, yeah, I do. I have one of these people, the Department of Labor pick, is over my dead body. The Treasury pick, I don't know anything about them really. So we're going to go there when we come back. We also haven't done Pam Bondi yet, who I think is important as our AG. Let me tell you about rough greens. If you eat non-nutritional food all the time, you're eating Doritos, you end up like Stu, okay? Very unhealthy. Okay. You may look it, but same rule for the dogs. Your dogs will start looking like Stu. Your feet.
An ugly dog.
That's a weird-ass dog. But kibble food has all of the nutrition baked out of it. That's why you need to put all of the live stuff, the good stuff, back into your dog's food. Rough Greens is not a dog food. It's a supplement. It was developed by a naturopathic doctor. You, sprinkle it. It's late, okay? Give me a break.
Not that late.
It was. I got in last night, very late, and had to get up really early. And it's late now. Anyway, contains all the good stuff your dog needs for a happier and healthier life, things like probiotics and antioxidants. Brown food is dead food. You have to have the green stuff. So, Rough Greens. Get your dog or your cat. They now have Meow Greens as well. Roughgreens.com/Beck for your dog or your cat. Roughgreens.com. They give you the first bag free. It's a $20 value. You get it for free. Just pay for shipping. Roughgreens.com/Beck or call 833-GLENN33. That's 833-GLENN33. Call them now. So I don't feel like I have seen Donald Trump compromise his values in exchange for anything that usually every politician does, except for Lori Chavez-DeRemer. I think that's her name. Just listen to her resume. First-term Republican Congresswoman from Oregon. She narrowly lost her re-election bid to a Democratic challenger. Before that, she was the mayor of Happy Valley, a suburb of Portland, for 8 years. She's considered a moderate from the swing district, which includes parts of Portland. I don't know. She is also said by the Speaker of the House to have more union support than any Republican has ever had. She's going to be in charge of labor. Gets very close to over my dead body. Let me bring Carol Roth in. Carol, what do you think?
Well, when you think about the Trump administration, who wants to have deregulation, they want to have growth, they want to be pro-small business, pro-independent workers, with Lori Chavez-DeRemer, you get absolutely zero of that, Glenn. I think this is a horrible, horrible pick, and is going to handicap some of the other great picks that he has around him as he tries to navigate getting the economy back on track. You have to remember, in the private sector right now, about 94% of the workers are not union workers. So when we think about who we're pandering to with this pick, it's 6%. A very small percentage of the workers. And so I don't understand from Trump if he felt like he needed to do something for the Teamsters who back this woman, which again, they didn't come out and endorse anybody. It's not like he even got their endorsement, or who exactly is being appeased by this. But anybody who cares about growth, who cares about independent work, gig work, small businesses, franchises, everyone is vehemently opposed, because this is one of three co-sponsors when she was in Congress, GOP co-sponsors of the PRO Act, which is looking to overturn right to work in 27 states, which is looking to reclassify almost 70 million independent workers as employees. And that impacts not just them, but also small businesses that work with them. And she continues to have a really bad legislative track record. So she may be a very nice person, but I don't care about that. I care about what is her policy track record and what is she going to do. And she stands in opposition to everything that the Trump administration stands for.
This is what I don't understand, because Donald Trump, he knows if he doesn't turn, this is turning an aircraft carrier. This is not a speedboat. It's not going to turn quickly. To turn this economy around is going to be at least a 2-year process. But he has to have everything go his way. He has to deregulate. He has to free people up. He has to bring down energy prices. He has to make the little guy be able to afford to do things that they want to do. If you have an obstructionist like this, you're not going to get that done. I don't understand what he's thinking. I think I just happen to agree with you. Liz, do you have any insight on this one?
Here's the thing, Glenn. I think we have to remember how the transition process works. The transition process, President Trump knows a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff, but when you are choosing hundreds and hundreds of people to staff your administration with, it's the people in your inner circle who are bringing you pitches saying, here's the guy you should nominate for XYZ. And while Trump ultimately picks that person himself, he is oftentimes using the information that's handed to him as reason for picking that person. We saw with the sheriff in Florida, Chad Chronister, that he's not always given a full breadth of information about the background of that person. I wonder if that may be the case in this scenario with the labor secretary as well. It's why it's incumbent on us, actually, to bring some of this information to light. It's not criticizing him. It's not refusing to give him the benefit of the doubt. It's helping him by sharpening his administration to be the most effective it can be, by making sure that these people are thoroughly vetted. I agree this is an over my dead body pick, because, I mean, she's not a supporter of right to work. That should be a deal breaker right there.
Right. I have to tell you, this one is extraordinarily concerning to me. And, if that's true that he is being advised on some of these people that maybe he doesn't know, we should find out who advised him on this and who advised him on the sheriff. Let me take the next one, and the new Treasury Secretary, Carol. This one, well, tell me about, because I know very little about the new Treasury Secretary. He's a hedge fund guy. What do you know about him?
So Scott Bessent is actually a fantastic pick. And I think one of the reasons that you're not hearing a lot about him is because everyone goes, yeah, that's pretty solid. We don't need to say anything more. Go ahead and do this. He has a very difficult challenge ahead of him, because Treasury Secretary Yellen has left a gigantic mess. And this is a person who is also going to be a major economic advisor to President Trump. So Scott Bessent is somebody who has been on Wall Street for a long time. He has a breadth of experience. He understands central banking. He understands macroeconomics. He understands government economies. He is a really smart, sharp guy with a really large breadth of experience, which is not always the case on Wall Street. Sometimes you get these specialists. The one area people are having pushback from, and this is coming from people who aren't necessarily in the financial realm, is his connection, his history with Soros. And what I can tell you as a recovering investment banker myself is that you have to separate Soros, the activist, from Soros, the investor. his history as an investor, he is a very good investor, and there are a lot of very smart, talented people who have come up and been associated with him. But that doesn't mean they lean into his activism. There's a story that's been reported that back in, I think it was 2012 or 2014, there were activists that were trying to get the fund to divest from anything related to Israel, and that he gathered a bunch of people around and marched into the office and said, "I will quit if you do this, and so will all of these other people." So I think that is a good sense, even though, by the way, they deny this, but again, it's been widely reported around Wall Street that this happened, a good sense of his moral character. He's also said himself that he hasn't talked to Soros in years, and he's also been a Trump supporter since 2016. So this is not somebody who's just trying to glom on at this stage. He has been a long-term supporter and advisor. And so I think that this is an excellent pick, but again, as we talk about his plans of 3% growth through deregulation, his plans of cutting our deficits, his plans of growth, this is going to be a huge roadblock if he has a labor secretary that opposes all of these things. He's not going to be able to get the growth in the economy if you have somebody who is trying to create additional barriers to work freely and flexibly. So I'd be very interested to hear about what's happening behind closed doors there. I know he has to worry about his own confirmation, but this is not going to be a group of people who can work in lockstep. And I'm really on Team Bessent from this standpoint.
I will tell you, the one thing that gives me hope on that labor secretary is Donald Trump, if anything, is a very shrewd businessman. He gets it. He also knows everything he wants to do, his entire legacy, whether he's, FDR or Abraham Lincoln or whoever, or just another president. It all depends on whether he can turn inflation around, drive prices down, grow this economy so we can get out of a lot of this debt. If he can't get that done, nothing else is really going to matter. And he knows that. He knows that. Let me go finally to Pam Bondi. I've got just 2 minutes. Stu, talk to me about Pam Bondi. She's the AG. She's from Florida. She's been rock solid, I think, in Florida. Everything I remember about Pam is she's solid.
Yeah, I'm a big Trump supporter. I've been very loyal to Trump. And I think, I'd argue she's a better pick than Matt Gaetz.
Yes.
I think you kind of get the same stuff, the upside of Gaetz without the potential negatives of Gaetz. And that's not to knock him, but it's, that would have been a difficult confirmation. I don't think Pam Bondi's going to be nearly as difficult. She's done this job specifically in Florida before. She's got a good record. And she is still, I think, going to be, she's not a manager. She still, I think, will be a disruptor in this job. So I think it's one of those where we've talked about some of these picks that have come and gone quickly. A lot of times they land on that, the person in the second pick, which winds up being the better one. I think she'll wind up being a stronger pick than Gaetz would have been.
Let me just end with you, Liz. We have just less than a minute. How obvious is it to every woman how much Donald Trump hates women? I mean, he hasn't put a strong woman in anything in this cabinet.
No, it's almost like he picks people based on merit, based on their immutable characteristics, which makes him, and I've heard, a complete monster. I mean, like I said, overall his picks have been absolutely fantastic. There are a couple that I think it's prudent for us to bring to his attention, information that he may not be aware of. But overall, the more disruptors he sends in there, the more excited we are and the more effective his administration is going to be. And what are we, 6-7 weeks till inauguration? I can't wait. I've
never seen anything like it. I when he walked in the room last night, I said, we got to hug it out. Because I am so excited for what is coming. We'll have more on this and so much more on tomorrow's radio. We'll see you on our Wednesday night special next week from Dallas. Good night.